Praise with elation, praise every morning. God's recreation on the new day.
Beautiful, just beautiful. And here we are, the first Sunday in May. This May 3rd, we are focusing on our power. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of power, and today is an A.S.A.P life. Now, that might, in some context, mean that it's time. We have, as soon as possible, let's have a life. Mm-hmm. I think that's one way. Or we might look at this as always say a prayer. And so that might be where we're headed, to examine how can we bring prayer into our life more powerfully.
Mm-hmm. Charles Fillmore, Unity co-founder, prayer is natural to man, and it should be cultivated in order to round out his character. So to know Charles and Myrtle Fillmore is to know that Unity was founded in prayer, but what he doesn't ever do is mince words. He says this very clearly, is that this needs to be a practice as a part of our day, a part of our own development and our spiritual routine, our personal routine. And it was something that was included in Charles and Myrtle's routine. I mean, hours of dedicated prayer. But the part that I really like about this is how it rounds out our character. As we are on a journey of life and we are calling forward and coming into the recognition of our own individual power, we really can turn to and into prayer to aid us in that, to find security in our connection to the oneness, to the infinite possibility that dwells right here within each of us. I really feel like that's what Charles was trying to relay to us in this.
I love that, Maggie. And what I know that's significant about this in my own life is, yes, I'm having a human experience. Mm-hmm. In human experience, I need to take showers, there's a lot I need to do. And prayer isn't always first on the list of to-do things.
Right.
But the spiritual life that I have, the spiritual journey that I have, mm-hmm. is intricately connected with prayer. Mm-hmm. Intricately connected with my ability to always say a prayer. And this brings us to this next quote by our own Unity Poet Laureate and minister, Reverend James Dillett Freeman. There are many ways to pray, as there are many ways to God. The way of the bird is not the way of the fish. The way of the babe is not the way of a man. I love this because there are infinite number of ways to God, which means there's an infinite number of ways to pray. Mm-hmm. And the way of anything is the way of that thing. So the way of a bird or a fish or a babe or a tree or a planet is the way of that. The way of a spiritual being as a human being to be present, mm-hmm. is to be one with God. And we do that by adopting and adapting a practice, whatever works for us in prayer.
Mm-hmm. I really love what James Dillett Freeman is saying in this quote for two reasons. One, it says to me that there's no right or wrong way to pray. And to know James Dillett Freeman is to know that he would just say, just pray, like Nike, just do it. However you do it, wherever you're doing it, just know and be in the awareness that we are in prayer in every single thought we have. So it eases some of that, like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to do this right. I got to get my language just right. It's just pray. And as Reverend Gary and I were talking about our topic for this week, I said, I pray differently depending on what's going on with me. So the other part of this is that the birds and the fish and the babe is not the way of the man. We evolve. We go up and down on this sliding scale of what we're dealing with. And, things come up to me in my life where the 42-year-old Maggie may not be exactly who's reacting. I might have something pop up, and it's the 13-year-old Maggie that's reacting, or the 25-year-old Maggie that's reacting. And guess what? It's that version of Maggie that starts to pray. And I may have prayed differently, or I may reach for a different relationship with my God, depending on what is up for me in that moment. And James Dillett Freeman does a beautiful job with his words, as is his spiritual gift, in just easing our angst and saying, hey, there's no wrong way to do it, so just do it. And however you reach for God, whatever you call God, that's okay too.
Beautiful.
And I love Martha Smock's wisdom here, where she says, your greatest prayer for another is the realization that God is within him, a loving presence, a power for good, a moving force that heals and guides and blesses. Feel your oneness with those for whom you pray. Oh, Martha, this is easy for me to do when I'm praying for people that I love, or even people that I like. What this is inviting for me is the awareness of my need to be in prayer for those who I may not be seeing eye to eye with, or being in prayer for people who have cut me off in traffic, or being in prayer with the person at H-E-B who's left their buggy right in the middle of the lane in the middle of a COVID-19 outbreak with no mask on, and just selecting which version of canned corn they want for the week with no awareness of what's going on around them. It takes a little bit more for me to say, bless you, in my prayerful, deliberate, conscious mind as an extension of my awareness that they are also an expression and the presence of a loving, powerful force that God is in movement just in their regular life. I think that's where my growing edge is, instead of having that physical reaction or that human reaction to whatever the circumstances when it's unpleasant. That's where I need to turn to prayer in a blessing and in a kindness and an awareness that we are all just Godding out here. We're Godding together, and I don't need to criticize, I can pray for.
Thank you for that honesty, because this is an important piece. Prayer is essential. In Unity, it's one of the 5 principles we believe. Prayer and meditation is a daily practice. And if we're going to truly live this spiritual life and this journey, we have to know that our prayer is effective. And a life in prayer is not just idly having thoughts, but claiming, committing, commanding a truth. So always say an affirmative prayer. Because if we're going to set in the universe a concept that we want to manifest, because our thought and what we believe creates our experience, then why else would we focus on anything other than the absolute truth, an affirmative truth? So in those situations when we're faced with bringing into mind someone that we have a disagreement with, or we have a judgment of, or we have a criticism of, or someone we have feelings that don't exactly feel good, if we want to affect any change, we need to come into our center. Just like Martha is saying, the greatest prayer for another is that realization that God is within them as God is within us. This is what the whole idea of namaste is. It's from the divine in me, I see the divine in you. So one of our prayers is a namaste. So that might help when you're in a place of, I have some judgment about that. Try out loud or in silence, namaste, and recognize that divine principle is true in everyone. No one's exempt. And this is the power of prayer. And we can always do it. And seeing that in another allows us to resonate that vibration in us, because we can't see it in another if we don't have it ourselves.
Amen.
Ernest C. Wilson, a powerful unity minister. Become a thinking, feeling, breathing, acting prayer of faith. And your prayer will find fulfillment through all channels that you open to it by your consciousness of prayer. This is putting it right on the line. Mm-hmm. If we can actively meaning we practice prayer. That's why we wanted to have a talk today that's always say a prayer. Then with each breath, in faith, we bring ourselves to this moment now, where we can hold the highest good, the highest truth, using any prayer channel we want. Affirmative prayer, a story prayer, a guided prayer, a beseeching prayer, a command prayer. Prayer is like making a cosmic commitment. And within that, we hold our attitude of faith. Prayer comes from our heart. It comes from our center. And that's where we are in control with our power, this purple power that we're calling forth this month. Let it be our power of prayer for the highest good. And then we can see the manifestation of prosperity, of wholeness, of healing. Right now, it's within our grasp by doing prayer.
Mm-hmm. I like what you said about the declarative, right now. I just recently had the pleasure of studying in greater depth Ernest Wilson and his writing and his outline of the affirmative prayer process. It is a declaration. He says over and over that we are to practice prayer, to really become in command and maintain dominion over our thoughts, which is perfect for our power of the month of May. I love serendipity. But it is to just really be in awareness of what we're thinking and how we're showing up. And he goes further to declare our good, to declare God is here right now, all the time, and I have access to it and access to that power in every faculty and every facet of my life. So to say that you are in your prayer will find fulfillment through all the channels that you are open to it by your consciousness of prayer. He is saying that in practice and in declaration, we begin to open more channels. we begin to see the light of God, to see the face of God, to hear the voice of God, the more we willingly, deliberately, and declaratively reach for that, to strengthen that prayer muscle, and then to be willing to, that's the next part of this talk, to be willing to accept those blessings, to accept what we ask for, what we are planting out in the universe. But the first things first is practice it and claim it and do it over and over and over and over and open up those channels.
Beautiful.
So Russell Lake says that we pray for ourselves, our loved ones, and for the world, always remembering that we see with limited and personal view, and there may be much more for us than we can ask or presently conceive. I really appreciate this wisdom, because while we are in the process of practicing affirmative prayer, and while we're in the practice of strengthening our prayer muscle, we most often will more easily do that for others that we love, for people that we know, for our parents, for our children, for our neighbors, and our church congregations. What we must remember is that we are in the human experience. Picture swim lanes. We're in this swim lane, so we can see what's happening right here in front of us, and we can take the next stroke and pray for that, and take the next stroke and pray for that. What we sometimes fail to see is there is a great big swimming pool that we are all in, and God is working for the greatest good for everyone in the pool, right? So we can conceive one thing one way, and a way that we can release our prayer with this wisdom in mind is to say for the outcome to be this or something better. I am praying for my parents' foot surgery to go well and for their ease and grace and rapid healing, and I affirm their wholeness, and it is so. And it will be this or something greater, because we can't imagine what could possibly happen for their highest good.
Because there isn't a big crystal ball of what the future will be. Mm-hmm. But what we're given is this ability in our oneness to begin to picture what we'd like to see. And then evolution happens, expansion happens. God is so big. And when we pray, we're not changing God at all. God is God doing God. Mm-hmm. Prayer changes us. It has us release that unforgiveness, has us accept a deeper wisdom in truth about ourselves. We're always stepping into much more than we can presently perceive. If I knew exactly what my life was going to be at every step of the way, I would so much have a much smaller life than the life I have. But as I go in my life, when I hold on to the truth I know, from the perspective I know that my growth and my consciousness grows, and when my consciousness grows, I'm not even going to see it from the way I can see it today. Mm-hmm. And this is the power of holding ourselves in prayer and having a practice that we can do in every moment of our day. Not an arduous task, but a way of being, holding the highest good. This is how we'll get through this experience of COVID-19, allowing ourselves the privilege
Right.
of holding on to the greatest truth for all. It's not just what we're doing. It is part of our oneness.
It's an expectation. An expectation in faith.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And Sue Seeking, she's such a wise unity minister. She brought forth much wisdom. Prayer is elevating the mind to the highest. This is what we've been saying. Every thought and action that reaches out for something higher and better is prayer. And prayer is the complete acceptance of whatever we have need of. And concludes by saying prayer is as simple as sowing seed, as natural as breathing, as easy as sleeping. I love this because, let's go back. This elevating our mind to the highest. This is using this power of power. It's our ability to conceive and have dominion over all that we feel, of all of that we think, of all that we are. And as we bring this in, we can allow prayer to be the vehicle, the container for us to accept that we have and we're given all that we need. And then, it truly is, prayer is like sowing the seed. Sowing the seed of our truth that's as simple as breathing, as being, as sleeping, as allowing.
Mm-hmm. I do really appreciate Sue Seeking's wisdom, and it syncs up with, almost everything that we've said, actually, because James Dillett Freeman talks about prayer being the sowing of seeds and reaping the harvest of what we've sown, which is, if you go back to the previous slide, what she's saying is that prayer is the complete acceptance of whatever we have need of. I don't remember, I think, is it Rolling Stones? I'm looking at the musicians. You don't always get what you want, you get what you need. And how difficult it sometimes is for me to accept that what's showing up for me is what I need. That I have the completeness of whatever it is that I need. Why? Because if we back up, the limited human experience, what we can't always see as why someone's showing up in my life. Why that door opened when I was praying that this door opened. Well, then we put into practice the faith of expectation that whatever is for my highest good and the highest good of all is through that next open door. So we don't, well, I do. You all know me well enough by now to know that I always kind of grapple with God a bit. But inevitably, I will go through the door after I've been like, but I said, come on. All right, this is the open door. I'm going to go because it is what I have prayed for. I have affirmed, I've done my work. It's this or something better. So if this door opened, then that's got to be something better. It is where my power of faith comes in, my power of wisdom and strength, and holding the vision to know that what I have sown and what I know to be true and what is for my highest good has got to be through door B, because that's the one that's opening for me, right? Can I see the second part of that? And it is as simple as sowing a seed. It is as simple as breathing and as easy as sleeping. Prayer, we are wired for prayer. We come in this body taking our first breath, knowing that we are part of a greater whole. We are hardwired as human beings to know that there is a greater power. And the thing that we do to get in touch with that, without having to be taught, without having to be told, without having to be schooled, but as easily as we take our first breath and we rest our bodies at night to sleep, is to want to commune with that higher power, to connect with that divinity within. And I just love that.
Beautiful.
Oh, I get to end with the wisdom of our great Reverend Gary Canier. This is a nice treat. Oh, I love this. Gary Canier's wisdom is, affirmative prayer is the highest concept of truth that I am willing to trust. And isn't that the truth? Isn't that what it all comes down to? Prayer as being the treatment for our own perception of what we are experiencing in our life. Putting that practice, strengthening that muscle, knowing the truth, and having faith is what allows us to reach for and trust the highest concept of God. And I'm sure you've got some more wisdom that goes behind that quote.
Well, this quote came to me in the recent new member class. We were having a conversation about prayer, and I said it, and they all said, write that down. So I wrote it down. But always say affirmative prayer, because that is the highest concept of what we're able to hold. And if we can't hold it, we can't say it. Mm. If I'm holding the prayer for prosperity and I'm saying, I am going to receive $1 million, if I don't really trust that, how likely is it I'm going to get $1 million?
Mm-hmm. Not very likely.
Not likely at all. In fact, impossible. So we can only bring into our life what we're really able to put our faith and trust in. Mm-hmm. So place the truth, the highest truth you can realize. Because then you can rest in it. Then you plant the seed in yourself. This or something better. This. So I can pray for prosperity because I know that God always provides for me. Always. There is absolutely no lack in my life. I don't have a number of how many dollars that is. It's just I always am given exactly what I need. Always have enough. And so I have complete faith in prosperity. There's a non-issue about prosperity, and I can hold that knowing because I have complete faith in it.
Mm-hmm. And you feel it, which is another thing that was in Ernest Wilson's teachings, is he talks about don't just say it with your mouth and don't just think it with your mind, but really put your body into it, people. Feel what it feels like to win that $1 million. Know what it felt like to drive up to that 7-Eleven and lay down your few bucks and scratch off that ticket, and what it felt like. How hot was it that day? What were you wearing? How many people were in line behind you? It is the law of attraction and faith. Like, this is what I know is possible for me in my life, and I'm going to trust it and claim it as my good. I mean, he really laid it down for us. I'm going to start with $20. I'm just kidding.
This is it. So, this is why an A.S.A.P. life. Always say a prayer life. Always say affirmative prayer life. Let prayer be a guiding light in all channels of being, and see what happens in your day. Just try it for a day to allow everything you do to be a prayer of the highest good. And then see what unfolds. And so let's do that by now bringing this talk part to a close as we take this into meditation. And we allow the Unity singers to bring us into this moment in song.
Be still, go deep. What you sow is what you reap. Be here now. One is known where life's fountain always flows. Be still, be still, be still, and know. Be still, be still. Be still and know. Om Gum Ganapati Namaha. Om Gum Ganapati Namaha. Om Gum Ganapati Namaha. Be still. Be still, be still, and know.
Breathing easy. We take this moment to be here now. Being gentle with ourselves. Dropping our shoulders and breathing easy. It's within this that we know we are one with all that is. We center in our heart, for it's there and we can achieve a connection in our wholeness. In peace, be still. Be still and know that we're one. One with the divine, one with God, one with the goddess, one with Jesus. Whatever name you give it, be one with your higher power. And therein lies the avenue for prayer. Right now, what's the highest truth that you can trust and respect. It might be prosperity. It might be relaxation. It might be world peace. It might be wholeness. It might be releasing all pain. It might be releasing all pain in myself and in all others. When we hold this truth, we're changing the frequency of our connection with all to be a vibration of positivity, of power, of belief and dominion. So let your truth be a declaration. Trust, love, peace, life, wholeness, joy, and holding on to your concept of truth, let's take a moment now in the silence. I trust that you can feel the vibration of that which you've declared. I can feel the strength. I can feel the peace. I can feel the love and the joy that I'm bringing to the universe, that we're bringing to the universe, making this world more peaceful, which was our daily word today. We contribute to the peace of the world by the power of our presence. Power of our prayer. And so as we come out of this meditation, let's bring this knowing, this statement of a declarative truth that we trust. And let's bring this into our day, ready to fulfill that which we know is true. And I don't think it gets better than that. Feeling that presence and that truth. So let's wiggle our fingers, wiggle our toes, roll our head and our shoulders, and when we're ready, open our eyes, and we'll say this affirmation for today's talk. Together, in faith, I pray without ceasing. And that's true. It's such a blessing.
Step out on the water, release your faith. Every step is stronger. Step out on the water.